The MLB trade deadline is now in the books, and the Philadelphia Phillies have slightly underwhelmed. While they did address the bullpen need, adding arms like Tanner Banks and Carlos Estevez, they did not address the need for help at the plate other than adding Austin Hayes, who's expected to be the primary left fielder. Losing 4 of their past 5 series and playing their worst baseball of the year, I want to dive into why I think it was a miss that they did not add another bat to add to this roster, and everything else with the Phillies. Now, before we dive fully into it, I do want to make sure you guys are smashing that subscribe button. That at this point in time, 95.4% of you guys tuning in this video have not subscribed to the channel just yet. So we got to get this Phillies Digest family growing as we're in for hopefully a deep playoff series or deep playoff run with this Phillies team. So Luke, right off the bat, I want to hit you with my skepticism for Austin Hayes and get your level of I guess concern right now. They addressed the bullpen. They did not add another true batter to this lineup. How are you feeling?
Yeah, as far as the pitching staff goes, I feel great. I feel really good about the overall staff in general. I feel like, honestly, this is one of the deepest as far as starting and relieving groups that I think they've had over the last 3 years. I think it's probably the deepest as far as, high leverage relievers and good starters go. As far as the lineup, I think they swung and missed a little bit on just one more bat.
Yeah.
I didn't need it to be some huge bat. I would have loved one more, but here's the thing. I would have loved one more, but at the same time, I don't think you just send a bunch of prospects for a guy. I think it has to be the right move. And to be completely honest with you, they've already talked with Dave Dombrowski after the trade deadline. This was a blatant seller's market.
Yeah.
This favored teams like the Marlins, right? The Marlins got so many prospects today. They had 19 guys on their at one point today on their 26-man pro roster. They traded so many guys today. Josh Bell, Tanner Scott, right? All of these guys, Brian De La Cruz of the Pirates, like so many of these guys that they dealt, and that favored them, right? That favored the seller's market. And once a seller's market thrives, it only goes up. Like we saw the package for Tanner Scott. We saw a package for a bunch of these guys around the league, right? These guys that were selling today, they were the winners. Like there wasn't many buyers that won the trade deadline today. I could say the Guardians. I think the Guardians had a really good deadline, but the Yankees didn't do much. The Padres got Tanner Scott, but other than that, that's kind of it.
Yeah.
Not a ton of teams got substantially better than they were. So, listen, as far as the Phillies lineup, as the bat wise, it was a tad underwhelming for me. But I still think when they play to their ability, I still think they are more than capable of hitting their way to a World Series.
Fair enough. And obviously we know there is a lot of confidence. We did get Rob Thomson just speaking last night with the quote saying, "We are a really talented club that's going through a tough time right now. And I truly believe we're going to come out of it because we're too talented. We just got to keep batting and grinding and do the things we did earlier on in the season." And while I do think that is fair, I'm also of the mindset that when you believe you have a chance at the World Series, as I think is the case with this Phillies team, you do everything possible to upgrade that roster. Now, granted, you're absolutely right about a seller's market, that we saw some teams severely overpay. Now, my concern is really with the blind trust in Austin Hayes. And the stats don't tell the full story here, as he was an all-star last year, but just this season, 3 home runs and 14 RBIs, a .315 on-base percentage, and 161 at-bats, just 41 overall hits. He's looked pretty brutal at the plate since coming to the Phillies here, and I'm not going to be a guy that pulls up the stats here, as it's far too small of a sample size for that, but I believe I saw .091 as the current batting average. Again, super small to be reading into that during his time in a Phillies uniform there. But the approach has really looked concerning to me. By my eyes, he looks like he's a guy that's pressing a little bit in his own head. And when you kind of see your role regress in a way as an athlete, I think it can go a couple different directions. That number one, there's the guys that are completely unfazed and are as confident in themselves as they are that it does not change. Number two, there's guys that get fired up for it and are waiting for the chance. And number three, there's guys that begin to get in their own head a little bit and question things. And my fear is that Austin Hayes went down that path a little bit, that I really did not like kind of the lack of confidence in the way that he steps to the plate. And he's also misplayed a ball in left field pretty severely that cost him a run last night, missing it off the wall on a hit down the line. So I've just really been disappointed in the Austin Hayes experience so far. I get it's early. I'm not chalking it as a loss, but I think it would be a little naive to count on him as your everyday left fielder moving forward. And I also don't love the look as center field with Rojas and Marsh being your options. So talk me
Yeah.
through your mindset there.
Well, Sean Bernard, I'm going to have to cut you off as you say that because Austin Hayes just hit a 3-run homer to take the lead in this game.
Wow.
As you said, I don't feel confident in this.
Make me eat my words.
So I'll say this. Finally, welcome to the Phillies, Austin Hayes. Thank you for finally getting a hit. He's now 3 for his first 13. But man, that was incredible timing.
Wow.
Yeah, listen, I don't think Austin Hayes is going to be like some big time huge signing that's going to crush bombs in the playoffs. Granted, he hit that ball really hard, so maybe he will.
I would love to eat my words. Would love to be wrong.
Oh, listen, yeah. I would love to watch you eat your words. But listen, I don't think Austin Hayes is going to be some big, huge, like blockbuster thing. But I think Austin Hayes addressed a need. I've said all year, Brandon Marsh cannot hit left-handed pitching. He cannot do it. Austin Hayes can. Austin Hayes can hit both righties and lefties. And while the splits are better this year against lefties, career, they're really better against righties. So as far as that for me, I'm not asking Austin Hayes to come in here and really be some huge guy. Like I'm expecting him to come in here, be a platoon guy, maybe be in the lineup 3 to 4 times a week, right? He's not going to be in there every single night for the rest of the season, right? Rojas is going to still see time. Marsh is going to see time in left still. But he's going to be valuable. Like, this guy was an all-star last year for a reason. Like,
sure.
he has the bat in him. And I think, listen, I don't think going to a new team and going 4 for 4 and 4 for 4 in your first 5 games is an easy thing to do. Like, I think it takes a few days. Obviously, as we just saw with the home run, I think it takes maybe a few at-bats to get used to it. But I don't want people to pin Austin Hayes as some blockbuster guy that's failing because Dave Dombrowski didn't go get the true blockbuster guy. Like, they traded Sir Anthony Dominguez for Austin Hayes for a reason.
Sure.
Like, this wasn't the blockbuster guy. And what will annoy me is that I just don't want people to treat him like he has to hit 300 the rest of this year, because that's not what he was traded for, and that's not what he's expected to be. Granted, if he did it, boom, works for me. But that's just not what I'm really expecting from him for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and one of the main messages that you've harped home here is that stars need to be stars. And kind of to add to some of the recent struggles with this lineups, for starters, you mentioned Brandon Marsh there. Since coming off the injured list on June 15th, he has had 98 at-bats. He has struck out 44 times in that at-bats. Alec Boehm, who was unbelievable to start the season, looked like a guy who had legitimate all-star potential. Through his first 84, well, did make the All-Star game, looked like he was leading the league in RBIs. But through his first 84 games, Boehm had 70 RBIs. In his last 20, he has had just 1. Now, he did rip a double tonight, which was a good sign. Again, we're kind of putting ourselves in a corner recording mid-game here, but I had to get some trade deadline stuff out. But a couple more that I did want to add. The real stars that we're talking about. Trey Turner, 7 for his last 42 leading in tonight's game, 167 at the plate. Bryce Harper, 6 for his last 42, 143 at the plate. JT Realmuto, 3 for his last 21, 143 at the plate. That's just not going to cut it, but also those guys can't be that bad for that long, right, Luke?
No. And if they are, it's been a good season. Because
that's it.
If Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, and JT Realmuto hit 150 in the playoffs, you could put the Oakland Athletics out there against us in the wild card round, and I don't think they'd win, right? Like, your stars gotta hit. Listen, I think we all know Bryce Harper's going to be at his best in October. He is every year. You can take away Game 6 and 7 from the NLCS. Sure, we don't have to talk about that. You get to October, Bryce Harper's at his best. You got there last year. Trey Turner played some of his best baseball last year in a brutal start to this year in August, in September, in October, right? Nick Castellanos, while a lot of people are very up and down on him, he seems to get the big home run a lot in the playoffs, right? Kyle Schwarber, nobody sets the tone better than Kyle Schwarber in October, right? This team is built to win in October. Like, I get it. They may not be built to win 125 games in the regular season, or be like a Dodgers team that goes out and wins 109 games, right? But I'll put this lineup and this rotation and bullpen up against anyone in a 5-game series in October with home field advantage. Like I still feel confident in them. I still know their ability, and I think I saw a tweet earlier. I think they ran it back for a reason.
Yeah.
Like I don't think you just run it back to run it back. If this team wasn't good enough, they wouldn't have ran it back. They would have made a huge move this past offseason, but they didn't. Like, they were good enough to win the World Series last year. They just didn't do it. Like, I think, one, the team knows that. 2, I think Rob Thomson knows that. And 3, I think Dave Dombrowski knows that. And I think it was obvious, right? 1, there wasn't many big bats available today. I don't think Luis Robert was available today. It doesn't seem like it. The Angels weren't saying anything about Taylor Ward. Cody Bellinger, I didn't hear his name one time today for a Cubs team that stinks. So many of these names. Obviously, a guy like Brian De La Cruz, but I'm very low on him. I think he gets a big hit here and there, and the other 80% of the time. I think there was a reason Marlins fans were happy to get rid of him. I think if I watch Brian De La Cruz on my team every night, I don't think he'd be my favorite player in the world. But it was just very obvious today that it was a seller's market, and that just happens sometimes. Like, it wasn't predicted to be a huge deadline compared to previous years, right? I mean, the best bat was a guy who's 10 for his last 61. Like, it just, you can only do so much with what's there.
Right.
And I think that's sort of what Dave did, because I think he knows that, we know what this team can do when they're at their best. It's just about, I don't think Bryce Harper's going to hit .097 all the way until November. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I just think they need a little juice. And honest to God, I think the best thing that could have happened to that team was losing some games. I said it to you the other day. I think losing games sometimes can be good. I think a wake-up call is good. I think if you ride a high all the way, I think you just go into, you basically just get set in it's like an autopilot. I just think you get used to winning and you do all this and you kind of forget that you're not the only good team in the league. This Guardians team that just beat up on you, that's a really good baseball team. A Twins team, that's a good baseball team. The Yankees, I think they're frauds, but they have 3 really good hitters in their lineup, right? These teams are good too. So I'm sort of happy the Phillies got this wake-up call, but at the same time, I think that Austin Hayes home run can kind of push them. Seriously. I really think they needed to just see a ball go out of the park. I think they needed to see one go over the fence. That's really, and not be an Aaron Judge one into the second deck near Harry the K's like it was last night.
Yeah.
That was a bomb.
It was. I will say the Austin Hayes home run did change my tune for this video a little bit. So shout out to Hayes for stepping up. We will see how the rest of the season shapes out. I do wish there was one more bat, but you're absolutely right. It takes 2 to tango, and ultimately you can't force a trade if a team's unwilling. And sometimes it's not worth the overpay if you are want to put yourself in the right position both short term and long term. But ultimately, you can't win a championship in July. You can't win one in August. That it takes until October and November until you can even have a shot at that World Series. So we'll see what happens with that Phillies team then. We're going to be along for the ride every step of the way. So once again, make sure you guys are smashing that subscribe button. We're going to be back talking every step of the way. We got to get that number up from just 4.6% of you guys tuning in these videos subscribing. So smash that button, drop a like on this video, and we'll be talking with you next time right here on Phillies Digest. Peace.